All right, welcome to lesson number 4 in our personality science course. And today we're going to be talking about conscientiousness, the trait of conscientiousness. Now, as you've noticed in the acronym O.C.E.A.N, we're on the second letter C, conscientiousness. And each one of these traits, again, as we've mentioned, has 2 subtraits. So it's going to have orderliness and industry as the subtraits. And let's discuss each one of these subtraits so you have a better idea. So conscientiousness, first of all, we'll look at the trait of industry. Industry is going to have a perceptual take on the world, and then they're going to have a behavioral take on the world. So we're going to look at these 2 different ways of understanding these conscientious individuals. So perception. Is there anything not finished? So in the industry trait, they're going to constantly be framing their world in terms of work. Is there anything that's not yet done? What else do I need to do? Is there another point on the checklist that needs to be checked off? So that's what's going to be very important for people in this, particularly in the industry side. I need to keep working. And so I can't be okay until all the work is done, to all the things that I perceive. So I'm constantly scanning my universe for, is there more to be done? You know, I can't go out and have fun and let go until everything is done. So that's one of the traits of this that's kind of difficult to hold, because it's going to prioritize externals over sometimes even your own internal feelings. And we'll talk a little bit about the science behind what goes into that. But these people get a lot done because of that. Conscientiousness in industry, and the industrious part of the subtype, the behaviors work comes first, and they make goals and they complete goals. So you can see somebody who's going to be high in leadership, this is a trait that they're probably going to need, because a lot of times your senior leaders do have a lot on their plates, so they have to be driven by that. So that doesn't mean that these are the only people that make great leaders, but it's generally one of the characteristics that is high in high level leadership, because of the drive and the need to do all these things. It's not always, again, healthy, because you can see how it easily lend to excessiveness in behavior. So it is very successful in the workforce. So it is obviously solving some problems within the workforce. So you can see what it's doing here. Okay, so let's transition to conscientiousness, orderliness. So in the orderliness side of things, they're going to have a take on perception. Is everything in order? Now, if you've got somebody who's high in orderliness in your life, you should be thankful. But sometimes you'll think, oh, they're just crazy about these things. They're constantly focusing on this. It's true. They can enter a room and they'll spot things that are out of order immediately, and it'll make them feel uncomfortable. So just as the one trait of, is there anything still left to do for work done? This is is there any object out of place? Is there anything that's just out of order in the sequence of how things should be done? These people are going to see it right away. So again, another great trait to have in somebody who's leading others, trying to keep everything on track. These people keep everything on track. Behavior. Order means the good life. So they're constantly putting things in order. They're looking for it, and then they're executing it. It's pretty simple and straightforward with orderliness. Look for it, execute order. So these people are constantly doing those 2, sweep and order. It doesn't mean that somebody else can't be organized if you don't have this trait. It doesn't mean that this person doesn't like order, but you're just not focused on it. Okay? If truth be told, you don't feel uncomfortable when something's unordered, and you don't have this behavior that you're driven towards this. This is a drive. This is a passion. They feel negative feelings when things are out of order. They feel great when things are in order. So you can see if there has an emotional component for them. It's not just an abstract idea. Okay, so the spectrum of superpowers, we're going to look at some characters in the world. So if we've looked at our friends, we know that Monica, they're constantly making jokes about how orderly she is, how uptight she is about every single thing. But she's a go-getter. She gets things done. She runs a restaurant. She keeps all the friends in order. But she's kind of crazy about it sometimes. Now, obviously, a lot of the humor in the comedy is taking our personalities to some of an extreme. So she's high in competence. She has high self-discipline. She's achievement and striving oriented. She's obviously somebody who can get a lot done, and she does. And so you can see it also in this character, kind of characterizes her as being a little bit nuts about it too. And it kind of drives everybody else crazy to a time, because each personality obviously rubs us wrong when we're not used to that way of thinking about things. But you can see she's pretty consistent in her character that she has to be that way. All right, let's try and look at somebody maybe from history. Sir Winston Churchill. He was organized and dutiful and persistent and goal-directed. Okay, so he wrote, I think, 72 volumes of materials. It's crazy. He wrote 72 books. He led World War II. He led a country. So he must have had immense amounts of industry to write 72 books while leading countries into war and leading countries in peacetime in general. That's an amazing amount of output that this person did. So high in conscientiousness, definitely for Winston Churchill. All right, C-3PO. He's probably our detail-oriented. He's disciplined. He's goal-driven. He's always trying to do exactly what he's been told, try to keep everything in order. And he doesn't quite understand when things are not in order or why you would just lead into the chaos. And so he's a sort of a concierge. So he's always trying to get everything done for everyone else. That's his primary programming. So he's one character in Star Wars that we can see is highly conscientious. Okay, let's look at the strengths and weaknesses of these personalities. So strengths is hardworking and organized. It's fairly straightforward. They love to work, they work hard, and they keep things organized. Their weaknesses is they can be workaholics. Sometimes they get to the point where they don't enjoy work and they don't enjoy life. So that's not great. The whole force of their personality will push them in places that is uncomfortable. And we'll look at the science of that tension between the discomfort of this personality towards the comfort that they receive from actually achieving these things. It's kind of this strange balance, and we'll see this factor in the science section of what drives this potentially. So those are the strengths and weaknesses that we can look at in this personality. So let's look at the science of this. So we've got this part of our prefrontal cortex, particularly the lateral side of the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for focus. So it's keeping us on task and keeping you focused on the particular direction that you're going in. The prefrontal cortex can hold the rest of the brain energetically in that state of focusing on task. So they're going to have what we call a high degree of executive control, meaning you can execute things in your brain very well because of the prefrontal cortex, which is the massive behind your forehead part of your brain that is very energetic in that endeavor. Now, here's that tension that I was talking about, dynorphins. Now, this is high in athletes and high achievers and other people of this nature with this personality type of conscientiousness, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. So that's a small piece of the brain back behind the forehead, back behind the main part of the prefrontal cortex. It's not so much important that it's there, but realize that it gets bigger in the people that endure things that they don't want to do. So being an athlete means pushing yourself into painful situations, and that causes these things called dynorphins to be released. And ironically, if you do it for a long time, it will also cause you to feel good at the end of it. That's like kind of the runner's high, where you feel pain and you push yourself deep into that pain. And then afterwards, you actually can sort of move the Overton window of tolerance towards that pain, so you can tolerate more and more. So an elite athlete can tolerate an immense amount of stress and pain, so that immense stress and pain actually becomes good stress and pain for them. Whereas for most people, that would be intolerable. They can tolerate it. So, and then when they tolerate it, they get a reward of endorphins. Does that make sense? So it's this mix of like, can I tolerate pain? You may have heard of things like cold therapy and things like that, where people immerse themselves in saunas for heat, or cold water for pain, and it increases your dynorphins, which inversely gives you an endorphin rush afterwards and gives you a greater sense of self-control and discipline. So this is an interesting sort of, push and pull going on in the brain to cause this kind of characteristic to happen. So conscientiousness, as you could see, has this push and pull. I do a lot of hard work that most people go, oh, that hurts, but they get rewarded for it at the same time. And they've also have a high tolerance of this. So very interesting dynamic in our brain that is caused by this. This is something that Andrew Huberman was pointing out in one of his podcasts recently. All right, let's dive into our group questions. Number 1, have your group stand with high conscientious percentiles on one side and low on the other so that you can visually see how your group relates to this factor. So just as I've encouraged in other ones, stand in these positions as you answer these 4 questions. Those positions help you to understand how the people are answering and where they are in the spectrum of this personality trait. What advantages are there to having high amounts of consciousness? Question number 3, what advantages are there to having low amounts of consciousness? So you might be able to let go of your work. What are the answers to that question? And what advantages are there to having middling amounts of consciousness? So you that are in the middle, you can probably answer this for people. And if you don't, use your imaginations and think about why people of these different levels of conscientiousness might be effective for your team. There's a superpower behind each one of these levels, and there's a problem-solving ability in each one of these levels as well. Think about those weaknesses and strengths that we talked about. All right, then. So this wraps up our lesson on conscientiousness, which has 2 subtraits, which is industry and orderliness. And so remember that. And when you understand and encounter these kind of people, or even people who are low in this trait, you'll know how to assign them into the proper workplaces, and you'll be able to empathize with them and see things from their perspective and why they're acting that way, and not assign negative motives to them that they're just crazy or they're just a workaholic. There's a reason behind it. There's a personality, and their personality was given to be awesome for your team and to interact with others in the world with it. So appreciate them. And that's the end of our lesson number 4. And I hope you'll join us next in our lesson number 5 in our pursuit to finding the awesome traits of every single individuals and be able to predict their behaviors and their perceptions of the world so that you can lead them and interact with them in a healthy way that makes them feel super valued. All right. So thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next lesson.